Welcome to the Grow Your Law Firm podcast, brought to you by PILMA. This podcast helps lead lawyers to more growth, profit, and freedom. Here is your legal marketing expert and host, Ken Hardison.
Hi, this is Gracie Howells with PILMA. Let's hit pause for just a second on this episode because I have to tell you about this event that every forward-thinking PI firm should have on their calendar this January. It's the AI for PI Expo in Orlando, Florida, January 15th through 17th. This is the very first conference of its kind dedicated entirely to showing personal injury firms how to harness AI to save time, cut costs, and grow faster. You'll get hands-on demos, practical training, and access to the best AI solutions built for law firms. Reserve your spot now at pilma.org/AI for PI Expo via the link in the show notes.
Hey, it's Jenna, Membership Growth Advisor with PILMA. If you're serious about growing your law firm this year, don't miss your chance to book a free law firm growth strategy session with me. We'll break down what's holding you back, identify the biggest opportunities in your firm, and map out the next steps to accelerate your growth. No pressure, just real strategy and direction tailored to you. Click the link in the show notes to schedule your free session.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Grow Your Law Firm. And today we have the honor and the privilege of having Tim McKey with Vista. Welcome aboard, young man.
Thank you so much, my friend. It's an honor to be here.
And for those that don't know Vista, been around a long time, and kind of just tell them what Vista is and whatever. Y'all were kind of the industry leaders for years.
Yeah, we came along just a little bit after PILMA started, if I remember correctly, and started Vista, which is a consulting firm and both in operations and strategy for the plaintiff law firm community. And it started this with my good friend, Chad Dudley. Chad is not a part of Vista today, but he is a good friend and an honorary part of Vista, if nothing else. I've already talked to him at least once this morning. So in any event, Chad's still around, but not in the ownership manner anymore. But, we've been in, almost 300 law firms now, looking at their operations and understanding, developing what best practices are to help our clients, which are the law firms, serve their clients more efficiently and effectively. That's what we do. We've branched off into some other things. We have a fractional or part-time CFO department now. I'm personally been involved in some merger and acquisition transaction and succession planning for law firm owners. And again, most everybody some of the people that know us know that I'm not a lawyer, I'm a CPA. Been around lawyers enough to appreciate what they do. We've been at this for 15 years and it's been a great run. And you and PILMA have been great friends, and I know we've helped each other over the years, and I appreciate you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate you. So a lot of stuff, man, there's a lot of stuff going down in the last couple of years, a lot of disruption, a lot of stuff that I think some people know about, but I think a lot of lawyers really don't know what's going on underneath in the country with not just AI. Everybody thinks that it's just AI, but there's a lot of stuff going on with institutional money and like you're talking about mergers and acquisitions. Can you tell us what you're seeing out there right now?
Sure, happy to. I think this particular industry, being the plaintiff law firm arena, is a little bit in, I'll say, a state of flux or in some disruption over the last, I'm going to say that's come up over the last 5 years. And I think there are three reasons for that. One is we have an aging population. And so we have some older owners. Again, not anything derogatory about that at all. It's, there are seasons of life, and I pay attention to all of them. And some are in the season of life that they're ready to, not necessarily ride off into the sunset, but maybe ease off into the sunset. And so they're looking for an exit strategy. And, that coincides with the introduction of venture capital and private equity, even more so into this industry, backing law firms or even on their own acquiring law firms in an alternative business structure. And that's the third thing that's kind of causing, this disruption is, in Arizona and Washington, D.C., we have laws that have been passed that allow for non-lawyer ownership of law firms. It's still a lot of complications out there, and lots of states still trying to understand what that means and how that works. But the combination of the aging population, the intro of the new money, if you will, and this alternative business structure has caused a lot of waves in the industry. Neither good nor bad, but waves. I'm seeing a lot of discussions and activity with law firms and venture capital trying to decide how to capitalize, if you will, on what's going on. So it's a very, very interesting time.
Puerto Rico, I heard, is that going? Is that real, or is that a sandbox, or is that the real deal?
Oh, Puerto Rico also. Yeah, I mentioned the U.S. I mean, obviously that's a territory, but yeah, they have non-lawyer ownership there as well. Puerto Rico has its attractions and detractions. I mean, I've got clients who actually live there, and mostly it's a tax play because of the favorable environment there. But also, lots of people like Puerto Rico, and who am I? So I mean, if they're happy, I'm happy, and they're able to take care of the tax part of it. Ken, you and I have talked a lot about, I call it yardsticks in this business. Everybody wants to make more money, have more time. But, again, for me, Puerto Rico is not an option because all my friends are here. And that's a big yardstick for me. And I'm not saying that people who go there don't have those same yardsticks, but there's more than just making money out of all this, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I looked into it, and here's the deal. If you're making that kind of money that you need a tax break, there's so many things out there right now. I mean, there's so many ways to not pay taxes. I mean, you just need to get you a good tax advisor. You're a CPA, you know what I'm talking about. But
know exactly what you're talking about. There are deferral mechanisms that are out there that work well. But we have to, as business owners, we have to float before we sail. So being in a business or a firm, it still has to be financially healthy. And as long as there's been business and commerce, there has been best practices. And to grow a law firm, you need to get more cases and increase the value of the resolutions. That's the key.
We recently had a guy on our podcast that he was been with equity, and he was telling me what equity looked at. And the biggest, if you want the most money for a law firm, it needs to be, the more it's less dependent on you, the more you're going to get for it. And that makes sense. And to do that, you either got to be real smart or get somebody like you to help you get everything systematized. I mean, because it's a lot of work, but if you get it there, and I've seen firms like that. I mean, we got firms in the masterminds that these guys are gone. I mean, I got one that takes off 3 months every summer with his family and just goes over to Europe and, different parts of Europe and does family vacations. And it just hums right along, man. I mean, he's got everything in place. He's got a good second in command, which I think is important. More I thought about this, I think having a great second in command is probably one of the most important things. And I've seen people hire groups like you because they want to get it ready to sell. And then once you guys got them where they're running like a sub machine, they say, why the hell I want to sell it? I don't have to work that much.
We've seen that as well. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean,
I do.
So if you get it that attractive for somebody else, it might be attractive for you. I mean,
I totally agree. I totally agree. Getting good systems and processes in place and having a second in command, I 100% agree. I know, and probably are friends with is my Cameron Harrell, who talks about, the second in command being so important. And it is. And, we've seen firms that have what I call a true second in command. Most of the time they have the title of chief operating officer, but we've also seen firms that have a team that can work very well together without that centralized officer. And it gets, I always say every firm is different. There is no cookie cutter. I get people asking me all the time, well, what's the multiple to sell? And, what's our ratio for this or that? There is no set answer for that.
It depends. It depends.
I always say that's the ultimate consulting answer, and I'm not trying to be a smart aleck at all. It depends, and people. The reason law firms or people buy firms, whether you're institutional or another law firm, they may have different reasons. Hey, I want to run another law firm in this area. or I want to buy this firm to roll it up and increase the after-tax earnings, or EBITDA, if you're familiar with that term, of these firms that we run. And the good news is about getting very organized and having systems, and one of them is an accountability system. I'll circle back on that a minute, is that they're very aligned with getting the top price if you want to sell. You should prepare to sell whether or not you want to. And that goes back to, the Michael Gerber, working on your business, not in it, and having people work in it and figuring out what you want out of life. And part of what we do with the owners we work with is, tell us what you want, and we can help you reverse engineer that to create it.
So going back to just the institutional money, because it's more prevalent than even I was aware of. In the last 2 or 3 months, I've been having the opportunity to talk to some of these equity firms and different things.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big move, and so you can always go and do the ABS, which is I guess in DC and Arizona and Puerto Rico, and then the second thing is that I'm seeing, and it's been going on for a long time, but it's been under the radar, and I didn't really know that much about it. But it's these MSOs. Can you tell us what MSOs are and how they work?
Sure.
And what are you seeing out there with those?
Yeah, first of all, to just put a definition around it, MSO is a managed service organization, and what you guys that maybe not or haven't seen it in the law firm arena, you have certainly experienced it in the medical arena, where business people come in, acquire a lawyer's office, and I'm sorry, not a lawyer, acquire a doctor's office, and basically they move all of the support team, everything out of that entity into another company called a managed service organization. And then the revenue production is over in the doctor's office, but it contracts with the MSO, and it pays a fee, if you will, to manage. And that MSO often can manage more than one entity or more than one doctor's office. Well, that's what's coming into the plaintiff law firm world. Again, it's not everywhere, and there's still lawyer to lawyer transactions, but a lot of times when venture capital or private equity money wants to come in, they want to be able to have a piece of the actual equity, thus private equity, and they can't, in most cases, own the law firm, and they want to build a mechanism that can service, many firms. So they create the MSO and they go and acquire the law firm. So yes, I mean, that is definitely coming into play here in the legal arena. I'm representing people and under NDA for some firms who are trying to sell. And I know we have a list of buyers, and some of them are working in that MSO structure. And they're all looking for a little bit different thing. And that's why I'm going back to, we say it depends. We believe that a right buyer is important, and it may not always be the highest price. I mean, there's obviously some minimums, but I've been known to say, give me my price and you can set your terms, or let me set the terms and you and you give me a reasonable price. So, that's the area that we're working in. But MSOs I think they're here to stay, Ken. I know of one that is actually set up already, and the couple of the ones that I'm working with now are using an MSO structure. They haven't closed, but I think they will.
So why would a lawyer want to do an MSO versus just selling out to another law firm? I guess
it depends, and I think I can answer it though. Let's just say you're a practitioner that's really ready to retire. You could still sell out to an MSO backed, or a company backed by an MSO, and you get all of your money and you go away. But the younger people who are selling out and maybe taking what I call taking some chips off the table, is they take some chips off the table based on valuation and all that, and then they maintain a smaller ownership in the MSO itself. So they roll some of their purchase into the MSO. So they've taken some chips off the table. Maybe they still are going to work in their law firm, but they had this huge upside potential because the MSO's purpose, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of their purpose is to acquire more than one firm, create a much higher earnings after tax, EBITDA, if you will, and then go to even bigger institutional investors for what I call the second bite of the apple. So that's, a lot of what I'm seeing, and that's a very high level market, a high level glance at the market. So going with an MSO or not, it depends on what you want. If you want to keep some chips in the game or you want to take it off, either one could work. But generally, what I'm seeing is the younger people who want to have more upside and are not just going to retire, if you will, then they want to play the game a little longer, but in a different way.
And I'm here, and then you got this other stuff going on, like not just the national firms like Jacoby Myers and Morgan and Morgan, but there's a lot of regional firms. Like what I'm saying is, used to they were just in one state or one city, but I mean, we got a lot of people. It's getting hard. I just had a new mastermind member. He's in like 5 states, man. I mean, offices. It's seeing that, but I'm here, and you tell me if you're hearing anything to it. I guess I'm trying to confirm a rumor, but there's certain people out there now, and they got money and they got backing, and they're going out. They're looking for law firms to do just what you said before. Is they're trying to put together a lot of law firms together under one umbrella so that they can flip it to a equity or MSO or whatever, so that they can build up their EBITDA. Earnings before, what is it? Earnings before
Income taxes, depreciation and amortization, EBITDA. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a smart move, in my opinion, if you've got the money to buy it, because if you've got a law firm that's got 10 million in net profits, and you can buy 5 other firms and then you got 60 million, and then you can get 4 times or 5 times your earnings. I'd rather have 5 times 60 than 5 times 10. I'm just saying.
The interesting thing, Ken, is once you get numbers that are really large, and maybe it's 60, maybe it's even more than that in EBITDA, 60 million in EBITDA, the multiples tend to go up. And I'll tell you what I see and what's happened in other industries. This is all kind of brand new for the PI, and that's why I think you and I are talking about it. Within the last 6 years, before 6 years ago, there was not much option for owners to sell out. There was option.
I know.
It was very, very difficult, but it's becoming much more prevalent with the things that we've talked about. But when you're able to get, I'm picking a number out of the air, please don't hold me to it, 75 million or above in EBITDA with a good operation. Okay, that's still a caveat, a good operation.
Yeah.
And you can demand more than the 4 or 5 times that you see that people are getting now. And that's another reason why you may want to participate. If you're a younger guy and looking to sell out, you want to participate some of your money in the MSO because you can get a higher multiple. Now, if you want me to explain it from an economic standpoint, it becomes more difficult. But the bottom line is these large investors, and believe it or not, some of them may be insurance company. And if you think about that, it'll blow your mind, because you're coming full circle around with the people that you're almost working against day to day that may be investing. They're not looking for that 25% return annually. They may be looking for 12% return annually, but with a good, obviously they would want more. But when you're spreading it across that many absolute dollars, the returns can be lower and still satisfy the investors. And again, I'm not trying to, I'm not smart enough to understand totally all of it, but that's what I see. And that's what I hear from these M&A gurus and these guys who have been in these institutional large investment banks and run these big firms. That's what they're looking for. Money's looking for a place
I've heard
to life.
anywhere from 3 to even up to 6, but 6 has got to be making more than 5 or 10 million, and it's got to be like a sewing machine. Like what I'm saying is, the owner could leave for 6 months and nobody would know the difference.
No, it's really fascinating to me, and I'm lucky enough to be somewhat with my ear to the ground and participating in some of it. And I'm going to tell you, I'm tell your audience and you, I hadn't cracked a code that this is how it's all done because it's so new. Different investors are looking for different things and different types of firms. There's a whole theory that, hey, this investor is looking for different case type in firms. Maybe they want, immigration firms, PI firms, family law, all of them, and they roll them up together, and all of a sudden you get a Walmart that has, like, you can go in there, you can buy groceries, you can buy furniture, you can buy clothes. There's so many different angles to this, and it's a little bit fascinating to me. So I'm trying to learn and keeping my ear to the ground and watching and listening. And I'm going to say one other thing, and I'm going to shut up for a second. I had an investment banker tell me earlier this week, it must have been Monday, that, in their crystal ball, and it's a very large firm, that in 20 years, there'll be 5 PI firms in the country. I'm not going that far. I think there will be, just like there's a lot of Walmarts, there's still corner hardware stores that have found a niche. And I think they will always be there, but they're going to have to compete with the Walmarts, which, Morgan coming in and those kind of things. Now we're starting to see that a little bit. I think it's coming. And, I've been known to say that, you're either at the table or on the menu. Are you a buyer or are you a seller? And I don't mean it that everybody has to be that. You can carve out your niche, but I think it's still very wise to be aware. And I said I was going to shut up and I didn't, so I'm going to shut up now.
No, but I agree with you. I call it the Walmart effect. I've talked
Yeah.
about it before, is that when Walmart, I remember it hit my small town with 10,000 people. When it came there, it's closed down some family and pop, mom and pop stores. But the ones that survived and thrived were the ones that differentiated and gave them something Walmart couldn't give them. And I think you're going to see the same thing with these law firms. The smart lawyers are going to differentiate and have something stand out. So whatever it might be, whether it's service or results or what boutique firms, that they're going to, or such a niche, such a specialized niche, that they're going to be able to compete against the John Morgans or the 5 biggest law firms, whatever it is.
Yeah, and again, I don't want you or your audience to think that I'm saying there's only going to be 5. I'm just saying that's an opinion of someone.
Yeah,
I don't
think it's going to be that. And listen, here's another thing too, and what I won't ask your opinion on this, because 5 or 6 years ago, back when Finkelstein was filing these lawsuits and everything in New York and whatever, I did a lot of research because I was fascinated by this, because it had happened in Australia and it happened in Britain, that you could have non-lawyer ownership, and it happened been going on for I guess it's going on for 20 years now. But that what I saw was that only 17 to 20% of the law firms were owned by non-lawyers, and that what happened was a couple of them that were real aggressive went bankrupt because they paid too much for the firms.
And Ken, I think that Andrew Finkelstein's objective back then was to provide more capital into the business for more access to justice for people who couldn't afford potentially or didn't understand. I think this MSO structure, though, we think sometimes the words workaround is a bad thing. MSO structure is a workaround for that non-lawyer ownership. They found a way. Now, it's tricky because the agreement between the law firm and the MSO has to be an arm's length transaction. You just can't go in there and say, I'm going to strip every dollar of profit out of the law firm over to the MSO. There has to be some other economic drivers in there that make sense. And that's why ethics attorneys are starting to weigh in and say, look, you can do this, but you can't do that. And that's why every deal, again, is a little bit different. But understanding where you're exposed or where the potential exposure is important, because then you can delve into it and hopefully mitigate. I don't know if you could ever mitigate risk to zero, but you can certainly decrease it a tremendous amount by simply doing it right. Not trying to cut corners and making sure that your structures are sound, the legality behind it is sound, the ethics are sound. again, I applaud the entrepreneurship of getting there. A lot of lawyers don't like this discussion at all. It was a club, and again, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm certainly not casting stones. But if you weren't in the club, you couldn't actually play. But now they're finding another way to play, and
Yeah.
it's a very interesting, and you got to be aware of it to be able to work.
Yeah.
To do
And
what
I
you
think,
do.
the big deal, whether you think it's going where we say or not going where we say, the big deal is it is getting tougher. There is more money going in. There's not more cases. In fact, there's probably less.
Less.
So there's only so much of the pie. So to survive, in my opinion, you got to do a lot of things, but just say two major things is you got to differentiate yourself to where you can stand out and compete with the big boys, because you ain't going to outspend them. Okay. You just ain't going to do it. So you got to figure out how to differentiate yourself and be remembered. And then number two is you got to have a healthy management and systems, or whatever you want to call it. You got to have a healthy system of processing these cases and getting good client service and all this stuff at a reasonable price. And that's where people like you come in. And so my question is, we're going to end up with this, but what should law firm owners be looking at if they want to know whether or not they got a healthy?
There's several things, and some of it is going to fall into it depends territory. And I'm going to give you the first one right away. That I'm a very conservative person, so I like to keep some cash in my business in case the Martians land in the parking lot. What something happens, I want to be able to respond. But look, I'm also a single owner of this business, so if I happen to take that money out, I can put it back in. But when you have partners, that kind of thinking becomes a little bit more difficult. So keeping the money in is probably wiser, because if you have three partners and two of them spend everything they make and they don't have it to put back in, you can find yourself in a real crunch. So that's a little bit of it depends. But I think what you're really referring to is, some ratio type analysis, and you've probably heard us. I mean, Chad Dudley, Mickey Love, all of what I'll say are the gurus in the area look at ratios of labor to revenue, ratios of marketing to revenue, labor being broken down into two components, the lawyers and the support team, and then what those ratios are for your firm, and then what is your net that falls out the bottom. In the past, have some, I don't know, rules of thumb. Hey, we want our labor not to be over 40% of our revenue. And now we're saying 40-ish%. And marketing depends on what stage you're in. I mean, I've got a good friend and a client in Las Vegas that's marketing spend is very low, because he's been in business for 30 years and his brand is so strong. So we can't say, look, Rick's marketing expense should be X. Rick should be less than X because of. So it's just understanding where your firm is in its growth, in its cycle. Are you a startup? Are you a turnaround? Are you realigning? Are you sustaining success? Knowing what your ratios are, and then saying, hey, we can shave a point here or there. That's what is what the best firms in the country do all day, every day. But there's one other thing they do, is they don't take their eye off their clients, and they don't let money drive a client resolution. They can be advisors. And, I've often told lawyers that, look, don't forget the second part of you are a lawyer and a counselor. So the counselor part is to advise your client of what you think is best for them, not necessarily for you. If they want to roll the dice on a trial, you think it's risky, they're still the boss, but you can advise them and tell them what you've seen, and they're relying on your experience. And, the good ones stick to that to the end of the earth, and the money will follow. So I hope I'm answering a question a little bit here.
No, I agree. That was my big motto, and that was about what I preached to all my attorneys, was that, listen, everything we do is for the benefit of the client.
It is.
It don't matter. Listen, this is not our one case, so we can do whatever's in their best interest, or whatever they want to do. If they want their day in court, even though 9 times out of 10 you ain't gonna get no more than they offered, give them their day in court, because they're going to be refers. Even if they lose, if you give them a good fight, they're going to be okay. But one thing you do, like we adopt that at Pilma too, that it was 40% for both.
Yeah.
But now we're pushing our lawyers, our law firms, our members to go for 30% because, and then the deal is, how can you do that? Well, AI and offshore people. I mean, that's how you cut your labor costs.
Again, very much aligned on that. I think your lawyer percentage is going to be in that 20-ish% range, but we can push down the support team because of AI. And again, AI is a tool, and I always, going back to that book, Good to Great, that Jim Collins wrote, probably, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago now. He said something in there that was a characteristic of the firms that did very well. It is that they use technology as an accelerator of what their business was. It's not the end all be all. It is a tool. Use that tool. When I took the CPA exam, it was so long ago, they wouldn't let us use a calculator, which I thought was the stupidest thing in the world. And I still think it was stupid because it was just a tool. It was helping us be more accurate instead of trying to compute these crazy numbers in our head. So utilize the tool. If you're not looking at AI in your firm, you certainly should, because it helps you become more efficient, more effective, deliver the service better with a higher margin. That's what we're looking for.
We're at PILMA's actually having an AI for PI attorneys conference in January in Orlando.
Well, if you're in the audience, you guys should go to that, because that's very important.
Then we'll have one day of workshops where we bring in, because I think you can use it not just for labor, but for working the case, but for your marketing and for your intake. I think it's affecting everything now. And I'm not one of the speakers because I listen to the experts, but I've got some really good experts come in, lawyers that are using it. They're going to tell you how to use it. And then I got some really sharp people that are using it and are going to share and going to show you how you can compete with 800-pound gorillas on Bobby as far as the labor part of marketing at 10th of what they're doing. I'm telling you, there's so much stuff out there right now, and it just keeps, every month there's one or two new programs that helps you. I mean, it's
just blow your mind. It'll blow your mind, some of the stuff that's out there. And again, for people in the audience that haven't dug into these, you certainly should take a look. And there's so many ways it can plug in and help. Some of them are a little pricey, but you have to weigh, personnel. And one of the things that we focus on in Vista when we're working with our clients is to create an accountability system, which means how are you going to, if you've got people doing jobs, which we're never going to get away from that, even though part of their jobs may be utilizing AI, is, how do you hold them accountable to doing what they should do consistently over and over and over? That's through some type of reporting, and that's what we help our clients build, not to use it as a hammer and saying you're not doing what you should do. It's to understand, hey, there's a little bit of hiccup here. You haven't contacted these clients, what's going on, and to use it as a coaching tool. But accountability is irreplaceable, in my opinion. And
I agree. I think I don't know what you think about it. I think every person in a law firm should at least have one key KPI, key performance indicator, and maybe some 2 or 3, and not just for you, to be a hard ass, but so they know what a win is, because most employees, they want to know what success is. And if you don't, you got to let them know what your expectations are and say, hey, 90% of the time, if you can get to this number or get this many things out or talk to this many clients, then you're winning. You're winning the game. If you get below this, you're not winning the game, and we got to coach you up, or either we got to get.
And that team member should know what his numbers are. What the
KPIs. This has been 20, 25 years ago. I used to let my people be access to their numbers. Some lawyers, I'd get in arguments. They said, no, I don't want them to know. I said, I want them to know. I want them to know so that they could, perform.
No, at Vista, we have a mantra in regard to performance and that kind of thing. We say it's up to the leaders and managers to give the team members the tools to do their job. They have to have the training to do their job and on those tools. And here's the big one that we miss, and you said it's expectations. They need to know what's expected of them, because if they don't know what a win is, they have no target. And and you contract that with key performance indicators. And look, if you got a performance issue in your firm and your team doesn't have the tools, training, and know their expectations, that's a management problem. That's not a team member problem.
Yeah. I had a guy from IBM told me, I had him helping me when I was building my law firm. He was retired management. And he says 95% of the time, if somebody's failing, it's not their fault, it's your fault.
Yep.
He said you didn't train them enough, or you hadn't given them, you hadn't done your job. And that stuck with me. That was in like 1996, but I still remember.
There are some truths that are still out there. And I'm a book guy, and I read, if you can see my office is covered over here, but there's 2 books, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and How to Win Friends and Influence People. One's by Covey and one's by Dale Carnegie, or by Carnegie. I think it's Dale Carnegie. But in any event, those are classic books that are not gonna, those principles, in my opinion, are not gonna leave us. There's a lot of fly-by-night things and that kind of deal, and I've got a lot of them over there, but those 2 are classics, and they hold true.
Yeah, you're talking about those 3. I added another one, and it's probably the least important, but I think it is important. It's like I said, you got to give them the tools, you got to give them the training, you got to let them know what your expectations are, and then I want to know what their expectations are of me. That's
great. Absolutely.
I said that was like my 4 keys to management, which I hate management, by the way. I do. I love marketing. I hate management, but you got to know it if you're going to run a successful business.
Well, that's why we're here, Ken. We love the management part.
I don't like it. I'm
well, look, it's work. Marketing is work too. Don't get me wrong, but management is heavy duty work, and it never ends. Because that accountability, that reporting, that consistency. Why did Tom Brady and the Patriots win all those championships? Because they were consistent. They did it over and over and over, and they knew what was expected. And it's not any different with a team at a law firm than a team of football players. Obviously, very different in a lot of ways, but the consistency, the excellence in performance, and monitoring is what makes it work. That's what we do at Vista.
Well, great. Well, listen, anybody wants to get up with you, how's the best way to contact you?
We're on the internet at vistact.com. CT stands for consulting team, but vistact.com. My email is just tmckey@vistact.com. So if you want us, you can find us.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Tim. And
you're very welcome.
Wonderful Thanksgiving and a merry, merry, happy Christmas.
No, you too. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and we've been friends a long time, and I hope it's a long, long time into the future. Take care, my friend.
All right, you too. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You have been listening to the Grow Your Law Firm podcast, the podcast that leads lawyers to more growth, profit, and freedom. Go to growyourlawfirm.com to find more ways to market and manage your law firm. Please leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts.